Hey there, Easy Math students. Welcome to homework 4.4, parts of expression. This is a practice homework. So let's read this. When plus or minus signs separate an algebraic expression into parts, each part is called a term. The numerical factor of a term that contains a variable is called a coefficient. So that's fancy for saying any number in front of a variable, that's called a coefficient, right? Attached by multiplication. A term that does not contain a variable is called a constant. So these are all terms. 8x is a term, y is a term, and 3 is a term. 8 is a coefficient of x. Y actually, when it's a variable by itself, it has a coefficient of 1, so don't forget that. And 3 is a constant. All right, so let's look at number 1. It says, identify the terms, coefficients, and constants in each expression. So the term in this one, very simple. It's just everything that's separated by a plus sign. So 3, 7x is a term, 3x is a term, and x is a term. You could even say 1x. You've got to get used to writing that 1 in front of there. So we have 4 terms. The coefficients are just the numbers attached to variables. So 3 is not a coefficient, it's all by itself. But 7 is a coefficient. 3 for that x is a coefficient. And actually this invisible 1 that we wrote is also a coefficient. And then a constant is a number all by itself. And that would be 3. If I were you, I'd pause and try number 2. Number 3, it says 2a plus 5c minus a plus 6a. So if I were you, I'd say plus a negative, and then also put your invisible 1 right there, because it's a variable all by itself. The terms are 2a, 5c, negative 1a, and 6a. Right? The coefficients, the numbers in front of the variables, are 2, 5, negative 1, and 6. And we don't have any constants. In fact, everything in this expression has a coefficient, so no constants, right? No numbers by themselves without being attached to a variable. If I were you, I'd pause and do number 4. Number 5, again, you're going to want to go through and any minus sign you say plus a negative, and now go ahead and list the terms. So we have 6m, negative 2n, and 7. The coefficients are 6 and negative 2. 7 is not a coefficient because it's not attached to a variable. Therefore, that makes that a constant. If I were you, I'd pause and do number 6. Number 7, 8, it says the same thing, but this time we're also going to identify the variables. So as we go through, it says negative 5a plus negative 7 plus 5d plus h. Remember, a variable by itself gets a coefficient of 1. All right, so the terms are negative 5a, negative 7, 5d, and 1h, or just h, right? The variables are a, d, and h. The variables are just what letters do we have there, right? The coefficients are negative 5, because that's attached to the a, not negative 7, because that's a constant, 5, because that's attached to d, and a positive 1, because that's attached to h. And the constant happens to be negative 7. So be very careful and pay close attention to your signs. So like in number 8, you want to say plus a negative, and you want to throw a 1 in there, and plus a negative. Okay. On the back side, let's do some vocabulary. So it says match the vocabulary with the correct definition, and then we're going to write the answer in the blank. So an algebraic expression is that each part of an expression separated by plus or minus. A number that stands by itself, a number that does not stand by itself is attached to the variable, a letter that stands for a particular number, or a number sentence without an equal sign has at least one term, one operation. Algebraic expressions contain one or more variables. That's obviously E. Okay. Number 11, a constant. That's a number that stands by itself. So I've used E and E. And number 13, a variable is a letter that stands for a particular numerical value that we just don't know yet. All right, skip down to number 15. It says identify each part of the algebraic expression as a coefficient, constant, or variable. So a, in this case, is a variable all by itself. A variable. 3, in this case, is a coefficient, because it is attached to b by multiplication. And b, in this case, is also a variable. So there's no constant in this expression. All right. Skip to number 17. It says evaluate each expression if a is 4, b is 2, and c is 7. So we'll say a being 4, b being 2, and C being 7. So over number 3, I say 3 times A, which is 4, times C, which is 7. And then we just use order of operations. So 3 times 4 is 12. Excuse me. 12. And then 12 times 7 is 84. So write down 84 and then make sure you circle your answer, please. Sorry. 84. Right. Number 19, we have A, B, C. So let's go ahead and just put parentheses here and then we'll fill them in. So we're just going to multiply these three numbers. A was 4, B was 2, and C is 7. So our answer isn't 427, we actually have to multiply these. So 4 times 2 is 8, and then 8 times 7 gives us our answer of 56. Okay. Number 21, we have AB over 8, or AB divided by 8. So on top we'll have two variables, A again being 4, and B again being 2, and then all this is over 8. So remember, when you have an expression like this, what you want to do is do the numerator first and then divide by the denominator. So really this is saying 4 times 2, which is 8, divided by 8, because 4 times 2 is 8, and then that bar means division, so 8 divided by 8 gives you your answer of 1. Okay, that's it. The even problems are yours. Call me if you have questions.